Right? We try our best, but we don't always get it right. And we have to be forgiving towards people who make mistakes. Even when they are well-intentioned, they still can make a mistake. We need to accept risk and then not be so afraid of anything that might possibly threaten us. And that will make us less vulnerable to the sort of fear that took over in March 2020. The kind of things that I think we need to try to dissuade in our ranks and in other people are bullies, sin storytellers, doomsday sayers, and proselytizers. Why do I pick those particular words? Because they represent people who are generally wishing to control others rather than to build with others. If you really want to build with somebody, you're not trying to get them to believe like you or to do what you say or to accept their own guilt in some story you have in your head or to accept that the end of the world is coming and they better do the thing you want. That's not how you build with someone, that's how you control them. So if someone you're speaking with is one of those types, you can try to tamp it down. And don't be a bully yourself, right? Live and let live, but do what you can to dissuade that sort of thinking, that sort of talking, because that's not how we build back together. I also think we need changes to our systems of media. Media was a huge, huge problem during this period. Right? Media, as I say, is just for sale to the highest bidder, and that means companies that want to make profit, right? Or governments that want you to do what they say so that they'll stay in power. And so we need to have more citizen voice in the media as well. And we blogged about this as well, called Media by the People. The idea is that people will be directly involved in producing media activities, sifting through stories, giving their version of the truth to the world, and having a more, therefore, diverse media landscape from which people can select the truths that most make sense to them. And of course, this means that we also need to recognize propaganda for what it is and reject the kinds of sin stories that are constantly being pushed towards us via this propaganda. We have to relearn how to work together without thinking about this us-them kind of framework where people who don't share my beliefs or people who don't share my perspectives are on the outs, and only the people who share my beliefs are on the ins. That's not a winning strategy. We have to relearn how to talk across aisles. You have to relearn how to talk to somebody who just doesn't share your beliefs or perspectives at all, but is interested in building a stronger Australia. And many people on the mainstream side of this whole mess actually are good people at heart. They think that they're good people and they want the same things that we want. They just haven't figured out that many of the actions they've taken have not achieved those goals at all. They've gone in the opposite direction. So it's not that there's necessarily a difference of goals, but it's a difference of beliefs and perspectives. We need to learn how to broach those chasms, how to walk across those chasms to other people, and figure out how to unlock the diversity strengths that we have in this country. We have a very diverse country, right, with so many different experiences and cultural backgrounds and belief systems. It's wonderful. But we can't unlock the strength that lies in that if we can't talk to each other. And that means sometimes including people who have strange views, right? And recognizing, look, it's your right to have that view, as long as you're not hurting other people, not hurting yourself, fine. But what can we do practically together to achieve this goal that we both agree is a good goal? And no religious stories about, if you just sacrifice, then you'll get the goal. No. What is the mechanism between the action and the thing you say you want? That's the scientific approach. That's the more enlightenment kind of thinking. Faith is for another realm. In practical matters, you need evidence and you need logical mechanisms. You do not want spiritual belief in, for example, lockdowns are going to create a control of COVID if somehow you're going to reduce the threat of COVID. That was never proven. There was never any evidence for that. That was an article of faith. And it was badly misplaced. We also have a number of suggestions for trying to reset some of the incredibly bloated and toppling with weight bureaucracies and structures of power that we now see today, which we have this term for, the new Gordian knots. Those of you who know about history, the Gordian knot was a famous knot that Alexander the Great supposedly, or at least in some myths, finally unraveled. And there was some kind of myth going on that whoever unraveled the Gordian knot would eventually be the ruler of all of Asia. And of course, he ended up being the ruler of all of Asia. So there you are, some prophecies come true. So some of the ideas here are tax system reform, which can take a number of different forms, reducing the influence of dead or blind money, and by that I mean things like the Rockefeller Foundation or the Carnegie Foundation, or just any kind of trust that is essentially allocated by trustees who are themselves no great saviors, but just a bunch of unelected, self-replicating bureaucrats. So why should they have so much influence over our affairs today? We also have so many laws. Have you ever seen the amount of laws? I mean, Tony knows this. The books are ridiculous. I mean, ridiculous. Right? So what does this do? And present company accepted, but these complex laws create the need for a whole class of middlemen to interpret the laws, right? And those middlemen then stand between the people and the great state, supposedly. They separate us from the thing that is supposed to be our servant, actually, which is our society, our state. Right? And I have to hire a tax accountant because I'm an economist. I don't understand the tax code, Everybody has to hire these people, and so they're essentially just free riding off of our very complex tax code. Well, let's get rid of it. Let's just simplify a lot of that stuff. Finally, I want to speak on the topic of community, which was told to me as the theme for tonight. So one of the great things that I love seeing about events like this is that it shows me practical evidence that communities are forming and are vibrant and are prepared to link arms together and work towards something better. And so we need those, and we need them not just in grassroots sort of settings like this, but also in particular professions, in particular kinds of organizations in areas and regions, and with particular kinds of objectives. Because those are the institutions of the future. Those are the ones that are going to take the roles that have been incompetently, putting it euphemistically, filled by our existing institutions. Many of our existing institutions are just so complicit with what's happened that they're basically unsalvageable, I think. And so we need to create new ones. And we don't have to just sit around and wait for somebody else to do it. Every single new institution that exists today exists because somebody in our ranks, and when I say our, I mean the resistance, people who were able to resist the crowd thinking of the COVID era, decided, well, I'm going to start something. And they did. So we have now the Australian Medical Professional Society, we have the Australian Medical Network, we have the Gaia people, we have so many different wonderful groups. And they're all serving some purpose. And eventually, I think particularly in health, they are going to end up taking a lot of business away from APRA. Great! We also have a burgeoning think tank, which I'm very proud to announce. That's something that myself and a number of other more intellectual thinkers have founded just in the last few months. So Ramesh Thakur, who some of you may have known from some of his statements, both on Brownstone and elsewhere, he's an ex-UN secretary and a retired guy now. He's in the ANU. He's part of this group, and so is James Allen, who is a lawyer up at UQ. Paul Freider's my co-author. Arif Farid, Julie Sladden, a number of other medical doctors, Dave Richards. So a number of us have banded together and formed Australians for Science and Freedom, which you can see has the website there. And we're republishing various kinds of writings that appear in the free press elsewhere, including Brownstone blogs, but also we like to take guest blogs. So anybody who has an interesting story to tell about a particular resistance organization or what you'd like to do, we're particularly focused on moving forward. So practical steps to help us move back to where we want to be, to restore what once was a great sort of nation and a great set of principles and a great set of institutions. Now finally, on an optimistic note, I want to end with this, which is some people come to me and say, well, Gigi, this is all fine and well and good that you have been thinking about all this stuff, but aren't you just worried that it's all kind of for nothing because basically the globalists are going to take over and we're all going to be their slaves, right? So I hear this quite a lot. So here are some reasons to not fear that, although the fight is going to be a long one. The first reason is that the globalists, so-called globalists, they're really only in Western elite circles. You don't find these globalists hanging around in Russia. Huh? right? And you don't find them in India or in Brazil or China, right? You don't. What you find them in Western elite circles. You find them going to Davos and rubbing shoulders with each other and deciding that they're going to run the world, and they go away feeling all fat and happy. It's like big networking conventions, basically, like a big old boys school reunion on steroids. So they don't have. Even if they have designs on the globe, they really only have the West as a possible target. Okay. Secondly, we have seen just in the last few months an incredible amount of exposure of these people. So we saw the Matt Hancock Twitter files, right? Unbelievable, just right for the world to see that this was not about health. This was about politics, and even the politicians didn't know what they were doing. That is what comes through loud and clear from those Matt Hancock files. We have had the Michelle Walensky, or whatever her name is, who's the CDC director, admit directly that the CDC lied to its people. They lied about tracking the vaccine damage, right? This shows arrogance, it shows conceit, it shows the kinds of stupid mistakes that start creeping in when you've silenced dissenting voices for so long that you truly believe you're capable of anything. It's like Caligula attacking the sea, right? That means their days are numbered, right? When you get to be that stupid, and you're doing that kind of silly stuff, people can see you and the game is up. So it's either all or nothing for these people now. Thirdly, the globalists cannot undo the vaccine damage. I certainly hope that we will find ways to help people heal from the vaccine when they have been hurt by it. But the fact that these poisons are still in people's bodies is going to stay with them. And every time they sneeze or every time their heart flutters, they're going to be thinking, could that be the vaccine? Could that be it? And it's very clear that the globalist wealth was highly tied up in these vaccines. So I do expect there's going to be an onslaught of lawsuits, as we are seeing in Australia, we're also seeing in the US, that's going to go after that money as compensation. So they have a big set of lawsuits waiting for them. The globalist networks are also already breaking up. We've seen globalists sort of leave the ranks, right? We've seen people step down, quite a lot of people step down, who were leaders, supposed leaders, during the COVID era. Fauci is one of the most recent ones. And we'll see fewer and fewer people coming to Davos. Right? When people don't come to Davos anymore, that's a signal that they're reading the winds. They're realizing, okay, wait, this is maybe not the right gang to be playing in anymore. And probably the biggest reason why I don't fear a globalist coup is because if you think of the story that the globalists are selling to the world, it is a story of misery and guilt and anxiety and ill health and lack of freedom and distance from one another. It is a boring and horrific story, which nobody really wants to be part of. What do we have? We have hope and joy and love and free spirit and human touch and song and dance and Novak Djokovic. So how can we lose? So I'm very heartened to see everybody here on the side of trying to revive the Australia that we would like to see again. And I hope that you will hold in your heart these kinds of values and continue to just keep your eye on the prize. Don't get distracted, keep your eye on the prize. We will eventually win. Here's some URLs for you. I have a few books on the table, and I also have a couple for you to just breeze through if you would like. So thank you very much for your attention.